our society as we understand it, and there are certain rules and ways of doing things that we try and stick to make life function. And then something happens and things come along and kind of test these normal ways of living that we've got in place. And we're in a dilemma. And it can affect our conscience. We can worry about it. We can struggle. We've got responsibilities over here on the one hand that are important to us, usually around securing our families, feeding them, putting a roof over the head and that kind of thing. But on the other hand, we've got our obligations, our commitments that we've signed up to as part of the society that we're in. And in this final chapter of Ruth, we're going to come across this other kinsman redeemer who has been just going through life. He's sorted everything out. He's got his stuff going on, and then left of field, something arrives and he's got a decision to make as well. He's in a dilemma. That's what we're going to find. And the chapter touches on the decision that he has to make. The rules say that he should do one thing, but him and what's going on in his head for the security of his family and everything he's invested in up until now pull him in a very different direction. What is he to do? So we're going to have our reading now, and John is, well done John. John is going to come and read Ruth chapter 4.
Yes, as Steve said, we're on the final chapter of Ruth today. Hooray! Ruth chapter 4, and it's entitled Boaz Marries Ruth. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here," and they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here, in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line." "I will redeem it," he said. Then Boaz said, "On the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property." At this, the guardian redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it." Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself," and he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon. I've also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses." Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah." So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he had made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. This then is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. Thank you for handling those names as well. I'm sorry. It's the Old Testament's always a challenge. So, this kind of follows hot on the heels of the previous chapter, when you'll remember there was that late night encounter between Ruth and Boaz. And Boaz now is dashing off. He finds the other kinsman and kind of presents him with this situation of Elimelech's estate. And the estate, of course, includes Ruth, wife of Elimelech's son. And this other kinsman in this passage remains nameless, actually. They don't name him or his family, possibly to spare him and his family some embarrassment, because he did not do what he was supposed to do as a kinsman redeemer. Now, we know that this is a bit of a love story, and we're quite happy about that, really, aren't we? Because if he had said yes, Boaz would have, and that would have ruined it all. It's a bit like that soap on TV, isn't it, really? But nevertheless, he didn't do what the kinsman redeemer probably should have done. A quorum of other elders, they gather round, they witness the decision. This is what the way it's done in those days. This other kinsman has a dilemma, and it's important that his decision is witnessed by other senior people in the community. And away we go. The dilemma is not unlike the one we discussed earlier. He's got family already. He's got his life sorted. He's got plans. He's got sons who will inherit the land and all the rest of it. And then he's kind of obliged to take on this other family line and sort out Elimelech's problems, if you like, and make sure that he continues to be attached, his name continues to be attached to that land. Why would you jeopardize what you've already invested in for somebody else? There is some land, Elimelech's land, the land kind of allocated to Elimelech's household that gets passed down the family, and the family name carries on. And this land sounds as though it may have been surrendered as collateral in the past, but now it's available because Naomi's back in town. She and Ruth are all that's left of this household. She has the authority, if you like, as the surviving name to kind of progress this transaction. The land is available for redeeming, a permanent solution to whatever's gone on. And Elimelech's remaining household, Naomi and Ruth, are kind of declaring this. Does he want to take up the right to control this land, to farm this land? Tempting offer. More land is more security because it means more food and all the rest of it. Tempting offer. Income. Make me more secure. But there's a complication. There always is, isn't there? In a good story, there's a complication. Elimelech died. There is no living son to inherit the land or carry on his name, but there is a childless widow of childbearing age in the household, Ruth, who could bear Elimelech a grandson. If you have a look, when you've got a moment, at Genesis 38 and Deuteronomy 25 back in the Old Testament there, they explain something of this responsibility within a family, initially between brothers, when one brother has to father a child with his deceased brother's childless widow to ensure the brother's family name continues. It's there. And something similar seems to be going on here in this passage in Ruth 4 with this kinsman redeemer idea. But for this anonymous kinsman redeemer, the trouble is that redeeming the land, taking on Ruth and all that brings with it, Naomi comes with it for a start off. So it's kind of an additional mother-in-law coming into the family type thing. Taking on Ruth, taking on Naomi, fathering a child who will eventually inherit Elimelech's land. It's going to involve this kinsman in quite a lot of ongoing expenditure, looking after this additional family for very little long-term gain. There's nothing really in it for him other than knowing he's done the right thing. He's honored the law. And a bit like our discussion, our example earlier, paying a mortgage but knowing money will be lost by doing so. He is caught in a dilemma. He's in danger of imperiling his own current secure position that he spent a lot of time and effort investing in, his land, and thus putting the position and security of the family he already has at risk. He's got a real clash of responsibilities here. He's in a real tension. What a dilemma to have, what to do. So he makes his decision. He changes his mind. First he says, yes, I'll buy the land. And then he says, but if they come with it, no, I don't want it. And he probably realizes that Boaz, there is an alternative. There is Boaz there. And I suspect he senses that Boaz is a bit keen, because he is, isn't he? Let's be honest. Boaz is a bit keen. So this kinsman redeemer, he chooses to prioritize the family he already has. It's a tough call, but let's not be too hard on him, because I suspect we might have walked away from opportunities to help others in the past as well, because that's what this is. Let's not forget there's this love story going on, and we're going now towards the happy ending, aren't we? So we're quite happy about this, really. So it's now back to Ruth and Boaz. The kinsman's loss is Boaz's gain. And he's probably thinking to himself, yes, and so great. He's now got a wife. Fantastic. The deal is done. A sandal is handed over. What's that about in terms of these transactions? So what does that mean? You know, if there's any dispute about the deal later on, do you rummage through your filing cabinet and produce the sandal as the contract? So you gave me your sandal, that's it. Something like that is going on here. It's the way it was done. The sandal's handed over in front of the witnesses, the town elders who've gathered at the gate, because that's where they meet. It's kind of a public place. And it kind of marks this formal and public surrender of rights and obligations of one kinsman redeemer in favor of another, Boaz, who steps up and takes it on. And some lovely, lovely words of blessing are spoken over Boaz and Ruth. Actually, you might even say these are prophetic words that are spoken over them by the people. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrata and be famous in Bethlehem. Who's coming out of this? David. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. fast forward to Matthew's Gospel, and you have a look there at the genealogy of Jesus and the names that you will find in there. And among them, you will find what's gone on here with Ruth. It turns out that this story that we've been looking at, what we've been looking at is just a little glimpse into the messianic family tree. And there's a whisper here, he's coming. He's coming. This whole little story playing out about a local kinsman redeemer is pointing to the kinsman redeemer who's coming. He's coming. God answers the prayers. Ruth and Boaz have a son, Obed, the father of Jesse, the father of the mighty King David. Fast forward into Matthew's Gospel, we discover that David's genealogy is part of Jesus' genealogy. And then it dawns on us. This story about the troubles, the day-to-day life troubles of two women, two nobodies in the world at that time. These two refugees who'd lost everything, who had left a country and come back in Naomi's case. This story is part of something so much bigger. They've been reduced to hard labor, gleaning scraps from somebody else's field, and actually their story is part of God's bigger story. God's bigger story about how God is involved in Israel, that God is involved in his people, that God is involved in the world, and Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming. They're part of the biggest story ever, part of God's redeeming purposes. And it's lovely. It's lovely. Have you ever thought in terms of just the ordinary day-to-day stuff that's going on in your life? Have you thought that God might be weaving that into his purposes? The problems that you talk about and share with other people, the experiences that you have that help other people, the life that you live that just feels so ordinary and so full of trouble, and yet God can take it and can weave it into his story and what's going on. It's fantastic. It's amazing. We've been looking at the messianic line, the family tree that leads to Jesus. God's involvement in these simple everyday lives actually connects with a much bigger purpose. God is concerned about the whole world, and it turns out that plans are afoot, rolling out and according to his purpose on his timeline, but plans are afoot, and a redeemer is coming, a kinsman, a brother, a redeemer is coming. And in amongst all of this, the faith of a refugee stranger coming into a country, a Moabite woman, played its part. She is the great grandmother involved in this family line. It's fantastic. It is fantastic. And here we are about to share bread and wine together and remember our redemption because of the coming of this Redeemer. I guess Boaz shows us something of what it means to be a restorer, a kinsman, a guardian, a redeemer. Took his responsibilities seriously. The kinsman accepts an obligation to care about his wider family, is willing to expend his energy and his resources to enable lives to be rebuilt. All points to Jesus, doesn't it? All points to Jesus when you think about it. Whether they deserved it or not didn't matter. That's what the kinsman redeemer did. The scenario points to how God behaves towards Israel and how Jesus behaved towards the world. The conclusion of Ruth and Boaz's story leads us so neatly into communion, where we think upon Christ's giving of himself to redeem the world, to redeem us. He is the ultimate kinsman redeemer. There's so much more I could say on this passage, but I'm going to save it for another time, because I think what we'll do is we'll come back and look at some of those names in the genealogy of Jesus, because it's fascinating who God included in the family line, in the family tree. And we'll have a look at that. That might be a nice lead up to Christmas. You never know. We'll see. So we'll see how we do on that. But I think we'll pray now, and we'll keep our focus very much on our Redeemer and on the table as we prepare ourselves for bread and wine. Let's be still and let's pray. Father, thank you that in the Old Testament, in the scriptures, when we read about the way you put this kinsman redeemer arrangement in place for your people, we can see that you had a passion to ensure that everybody was cared for, that everybody was looked out for, that there was a way back for people who'd fallen on difficult times, that they wouldn't be just simply overrun. Thank you that this whole principle of compassion and care and lifting up is part of who you are, and we can find it time and time again in the story of how you relate to your people and to this world. And in particular, we just look at the cross, and we look at Jesus, and we look at how you just want to lift us up. Thank you. And as we approach the table now to share bread and wine together, as we remember the cross, you take us right back to that act of redemption, of somebody setting aside their own agenda for others, somebody taking the hit, paying the price, bearing the cost, carrying the burden of restoration, being the guardian of those who couldn't look after themselves. All of that language is here at this table. And we thank you. We thank you as best we can, with the understanding that we have from the bottom of our hearts that you care for us, that you do this for us, that Jesus, you are our kinsman, you are our brother, you are our Savior, you are our King, you are our Redeemer. Praise you, Jesus. Amen. Amen.